Good morning, everybody. This is our Tuesday, February 10th, regular meeting of the Mason County Commission. We'll go ahead and go to our Pledge of Allegiance. Harry Tashel, where'd you go?
Right here.
Would you please lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance?
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
We will move into item number 3, roll call.
Commissioner District 1, Randy Netherland.
Here.
Commissioner District 2, Tim Sheldon.
Here.
Commissioner District 3, Terry Jeffries.
Here.
Item number 4, correspondence and organizational business. Do we have any correspondence to come before the board today?
We do. The Washington State Liquor Control Board sent a marijuana license application for Wonder West Group. The Veterans Advisory Board sent their annual report. Mike Callahan sent ideas for improving tourism in Mason County. Central and North Mason Fire District Chiefs sent a letter about their exploratory collaboration process. And the Belfair Sewer Advisory Committee sent a financial model for use in formulating and executing a financial plan.
Thank you. Item number 4.2, news release, 2016 Comprehensive Plan Update. Staff, Barb Atkins.
Okay, Bob Atkins, Department of Community Development. This is a news release regarding the 2016 comprehensive plan update. Under RCW 3670A, Mason County is required to review and amend and revise its comprehensive plan and develop regulations by June 30th, 2016. To provide some assurance that local jurisdictions comply with this mandate, the Washington Department of Commerce awarded state grant funding to several counties, including ours. Provided with this grant award is a statement of work outlining various goals and action items to be completed within a specific timeline. Goal 1 was to review relevant comprehensive plan and develop regulations using a periodic update checklist provided by the Department of Commerce. Goal 2 is to conduct a public hearing to review the proposed comprehensive plan and develop regulations updates as identified from the checklist and to seek citizens' proposals for updating current comprehensive plan goals and policies. A public hearing has been scheduled for February 17, 2015 at 6 p.m. with the Planning Advisory Commission to review the results of the checklist and allow for public testimony and comments on those changes. For additional information, you can contact me at 427-9670, extension 286.
Thank you very much, Barbara. Next, item number 4.3. It's a news release for Solid Waste Advisory Committee membership. Staff, Erica.
Good morning, Commissioners.
Good morning.
My name is Erica Schwinner. I'm the Deputy Utility Director with Mason County, and we have a news release for today. The news release today is addressing our wish to recruit additional members for the Solid Waste Advisory Committee. Mason County is seeking individuals to serve on the Mason County Solid Waste Advisory Committee, short SWAC. The committee reviews and makes recommendations to the commissioners regarding solid waste and special waste management in Mason County, including disposal rates, disposal options, waste reduction, recycling, household hazardous waste, and composting programs. The committee consists of at least 9 members and is appointed by the Board of Mason County Commissioners. State law establishes that the committee include at least one community member from each of the 3 commissioner districts, as well as a representative for the city of Shelton and representatives from the tribes and businesses in Mason County involved in waste and recycling handling, collection, and/or disposal. Committee members are appointed for a 3-year term. Participation is voluntary and members meet once a month. For more information about the SWAC, please contact Erica Schwender at 427-9670, extension 652. For an application, please contact the Mason County Commissioner's Office at 427-9670 at extension 419, or visit our website at www.co.mason.wa.us. First review of submitted applications will occur on Monday, March 16, 2015. Applications will be accepted until the positions are filled.
Thank you very much. You had a question?
Yeah, so Erica, if I'm correct in saying that it's very important this group are meeting right now because they will be updating our comprehensive solid waste management plan. And so just want to encourage folks that are even thinking about that this is the time to be part of this group because this plan has not been updated for quite a long time, and we've got a lot of things changing in the county, and so I'd love to have your voice and your work on that work.
That's correct.
Thank you, Erica. Next, we'll move on to item number 5, which is your open forum for citizen input. This is your opportunity to come and speak to the public and the commission in regards to items that are not on the agenda. If they are on the agenda, we'd ask that you would wait until that time comes up and you can have it removed if it's on the action agenda, or you can speak about it and testify at that time. But if it is not on the agenda, this is your opportunity to talk to the public and to the commission as well. With that being said, you'll be given 5 minutes per person, up to 15 minutes total, so please be brief for everybody else. With that being said, is there anybody in the audience who would like to speak today on any item that is not on the agenda? Please come up and announce your name and where you're from, please. And
Pat Loudon, I'm from Belfort. I just wanted to say I've been following the sewer advisory group pretty close, just through the minutes and talking to other people, and I think it's really great what they're doing, and I think the commission should really take advantage of the people they got working on that committee, and it looks like we're trying to get a plan, so I think the commission should be very appreciative of that. Thank you.
Thank you.
thank you. Tom.
Thank you, and good morning, Commissioners. Tom Davis, 170 West Bushy Road. There's been a lot of discussion lately about crime and the crime statistics in Mason County, and rightfully so. And we're moving ahead, I think, with some innovative plans on how to lower the crime rate. We spend a lot of time and an awful lot of money in public safety, and most of the money that we put to public safety does really not prevent crime. It responds to crime, it handles crime. Once it has occurred, it handles the incarceration of people and so on, but it doesn't do much to prevent crime. The only thing we have currently in Mason County that would prevent future crime is therapeutic courts. We have that, and that's just a kind of fledgling program. We have the family problem-solving court, and we have drug court. And if anybody hasn't been to one of those graduations, it's very moving, and it has a lot of promise. What we're missing here, the component we're missing here, is Veterans Court. Veterans Court has been a proven therapeutic court throughout the whole country. And I don't think, and I think I would get a lot of support on this, that veterans are most deserving of their own separate court. They have separate issues. They have life-defining moments that have happened that are military-related that other people don't necessarily relate to. They need their own court, and that has been proven. It's just not my word. Again, it has been proven around the country that veterans' courts lower the crime rate. And again, I think they're most deserving. Now we have that on the table. However, it's moving at glacial speed. My problem is, I'm the mentor veteran coordinator for Mason County. I have guys in court who would be in veterans court that are now faced with going to jail because there is no veteran court, because they don't meet they don't meet the requirements of perhaps drug court that they would meet the requirements of veterans court. I don't want to see one of my guys go to jail because we're moving a little too slowly. We've taken care of the funding. That court is funded. Every aspect of that court is funded. We have a model, actually, we have our pickup models all over the nation, but Thurston County is an excellent model, Spokane is an excellent model. We have the mentor program, we have guidebooks, we have everything that we need to implement Veterans Court within 30 days. But for some reason, it's being held up, and I don't know why. When I speak to the judges, and Oz will be a Superior Court Veterans Court, but when I speak to the District Court judges, they're in support of that. I'm going to try and speak to the Superior Court judges to see if there's anything that we can do to focus our attention on whatever obstacle is in the way of having a Veterans Court sooner rather than later. So any help I can get from the Commission would be greatly appreciated. There's no reason in the world to send a veteran to serve their country to jail when there's alternatives on the table. Thank you.
Tom, before you go away, thank you again for what you do, because you're tireless on this, and it's very much appreciated.
I'm certainly not alone, but thank you.
I see that today. We're
Yes.
gonna. Is there anybody else who would like to speak about an issue that is not on the agenda today?
I think Mike Brown does. Don't see him in here. Vandross VFW?
No.
No.
Anybody else? Anybody? Hearing none, then we will go ahead and close the open forum for citizens' input and move to the adoption of the agenda.
Mr. Chairman, I move that the Board of County Commissioners adopt the agenda as presented today.
A second?
It's been moved and seconded for the adoption of the agenda as presented today. All in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Aye. The motion carries. Next is the approval of the minutes.
Mr. Chair, I move that we approve the January 26th briefing minutes and the February 3rd regular meeting minutes.
Second the motion, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. It's been moved and seconded for the approval of the January 26, 2015 briefing minutes and the February 3rd, 2015 regular meeting minutes. All in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Aye. The motion carries. Next, we will move on to the action agenda. All the items listed under the action agenda will be voted on with one specific vote. You will be given an opportunity after we read them to you to decide whether you'd like to have one taken off for a separate vote or to have further conversation. If you have just a question that would help you to decide whether to take it off for a separate vote, that'll be allowed first, and then we'll ask if you want it taken off for a separate vote. I will add, if you would like to testify, that the question time would not be that time. We would ask that you have it taken off for a separate vote. Then you'll be given an opportunity to testify at that time. With that being said, I will read items number 8.1 and 8.2. Commissioner Jeffries, if you will read 8.3, 8.4, and
I'll take it.
8.5. That's a big one today. And Commissioner Sheldon, 8.6 and 8.7, and I appreciate your service. It's a big one.
Mr. Chairman, before you begin, I just want to point out, there are a couple more chairs over here if individuals want to take them.
Please, we'll hold off for a minute, and please come in. And could somebody pull out another chair from over here, please? We have a lady out in the audience, and we have to make sure she has a chair as well.
Yeah, thanks, Erica.
Thank you, Erica. There's a chair over here for you. Right over here, ma'am. Oh, okay, good. Okay, with that being said, we will go ahead and move on to item 8.1. On the approval of the action agenda, item 8.1 reads, approval for the board to authorize Public Works to advertise, select, and award a contract to pick up and dispose of large animal carcasses from the county right-of-way. Award will be announced during a regularly scheduled commission meeting. Item number 8.2, approval for the board to appoint Jeff Carey to represent the Belfair Allen UGA growth areas and Jack Johnson to represent freight trucking for the 2015-2016 Transportation Improvement Program Citizens Advisory Panel, otherwise known as TIPCAP.
8.3, approval of the 2015 contracts with Mental Health Professionals, LLC, in amount not to exceed $60,500, and Northwest Resources II, Incorporated, in an amount not to exceed $115,008 for mental health and substance abuse services, and authorize the chair to sign the contracts. The maximum consideration for these contracts is inclusive of the amounts invoiced by the contractors for January services, which were under the 2014 contracts. The 2014 contracts were extended to 2015 until these successor contracts are completed. These services will be funded by the Mental Health Fund. 8.4, approval for the board to authorize the chair to execute the road levy certification for 2015. 8.5, approval of the 2015 contract awards as recommended by the Housing Coalition, and authorize the chair to sign each of the corresponding contracts as follows. Turning Point for shelter operations in amount of $35,000. North Mason Resources for homeless advocacy services, $34,735. St. David's Church for the HOST program, and HOST stands for Housing Opportunity for Students in Transition, for $130,994. St. David's Church for the Housing Case Manager of $31,550. St. David's Church Cold Weather Shelter for $15,000. North Mason School District Feller Center Cold Weather Shelter, $20,000. Crossroads Housing for Shelter Operations, $43,065. Crossroads Housing Transitional Housing, $12,000. And Crossroads Housing for Rental Assistance, $90,375. All other terms and conditions of the 2015 contracts and any existing appendices will remain the same. Further, authorize the chair to sign the amendment as per the original 2015 contract. These grant recommendations are funded from the 2060 and 2163 housing funds.
8.6, approval of the contract amendment K1410 between Mason County and Washington State Healthcare Authority. Accepting this contract provides some administrative cost recovery on activities the health department is already performing. This contract has been budgeted for the 2015 year and there are no match requirements. 8.7, approval to authorize the chair to sign the contract with Blue Collar Agency for Tourism Development Services for 2015 and ending December 31, 2016, as recommended by the Lodging Tax Advisory Committee. The 2015 contract is for $162,532 and is paid for by lodging tax funds.
Thank you, Commissioners. Now that they've been read to you, you'll be given an opportunity now to ask any questions that you may have that would help you decide whether or not to take it off for a separate vote. With that being said, are there any questions that anybody in the audience has in regards to any of the items that you've just heard read to you that would help you to make that decision? Hearing none, you will now be given an opportunity. Is there any item in specific that you would have and like to be taken off for a specific vote where you will have an opportunity to testify?
Item 8.2.
Item number 8.2. Are there any other items in the audience of anybody who would like to have an item taken off for a specific and separate vote? Commissioners, any items? No. Commissioner? With that, I will entertain a motion.
Mr. Chairman, I move that the Board of County Commissioners approve the action agenda items today, item 8.1 through item 8.7, with the exception of item 8.2 to be heard from separately.
Thank you.
I'll second that.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded for the approval of the action agenda as listed, items 8.1 through 8.7, with the exclusion of item 8.2, which will be taken off for a separate vote and discussion. Any further discussion?
I just want to make the comment that we have 3 items on here that are the result of work from citizen advisory committees, and I just want to thank folks that do step up to do that work. This is the heavy lifting, and we get the easy part of signing and passing on those recommendations. And just thanks to the Lodging Tax Advisory Committee, thank you to the Mental Health Substance Abuse Advisory Committee, and thank you to the Housing Coalition. Those are some pretty important groups, and thank you for your work.
And I'll also thank them as well. It sure helps us to get citizen input and makes a much better product when people are involved. So thank you very much to those that have worked so hard on these items.
Agreed. Any further? Anything further? All in favor signify. All in favor of the approval of the action agenda items number 8.1 through 8.7 as listed, with the exclusion of 8.2, signify by saying aye.
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 Aye. The motion carries. Item number 8.2, approval for the board to appoint Jeff Carey to represent the Belfair Allen urban growth areas, and Jack Johnson to represent freight trucking for the 2015-2016 Transportation Improvement Program Citizens Advisory Panel, otherwise known as TIPCAP. Would you like to start off by explaining what that is to the audience?
Good morning, Melissa McFadden, Mason County Public Works. The Transportation Improvement Program Citizen Advisory Panel meets, I believe, January through July. Most years they meet approximately once a month. We re-advertised. We didn't get a lot of interest the last time, so we re-advertised, and we've had 2 more folks express an interest in being on the panel. So we're very close. If you guys choose to appoint these two people in the positions that they applied for, we would be close to filling up our whole 9-person panel. We still have 2 vacancies. So again, these are the only additional applications that we received. If there are any questions?
So there are no other applicants for those, because these are set up by position, if I'm correct. Belfair Allen UGA, the Hoodsport Potlatch area, the Shelton UGA, the trucking industry, the Pardon me? Transit and bicycle, yeah.
And one from each commissioner district. And one from the city. I don't know if you said that.
I haven't yet, but that works.
From the urban growth area of the city.
Yes, ma'am.
That shall be.
Yeah. So with that, thank you very much. Does anybody in the audience have any questions for staff? Thank you very much. With that being said, you'll be given an opportunity now to testify if you would like. If you would like to testify, please raise your hand and be acknowledged, and we'll have you come up front. Pat, please.
Pat Loudon, I'm from Belfair. I wanted to come down and I wanted to make a comment that Jack Johnson already sits on the sewer advisory panel for the Belfair area. And he also owns a trucking company, which I'm sure his input would be greatly appreciated. But any comments or suggestions he makes to the county could potentially profit his companies. And I think that's a conflict of interest. And I would like to put that on the record before you vote on that, because I think it's very important that there is a conflict of interest there. And that's my opinion.
Well, thank you. And just to add, we purposely actually created a position, though, for trucking and representation. So to be actually conflict of interest, they would have to profit personally, separate from the other individuals as a whole, for it to be considered a conflict. Just so you know, that's something I looked into before.
Could you explain that again?
Yes, you would have to literally profit off it specifically, not as a whole. If everybody as a whole profits off it or is benefit of it, then it is not a conflict of interest. If you specifically, you yourself, profit off it directly by yourself, then it is a straight out conflict of interest. Other than that, it would be something that would be, you should give notice if you're going to be making money off it personally. You know, even if the whole room or everybody else made a profit off it, you still should make notice, but it's not considered a legal conflict of interest.
Even though his company, his suggestions to the tip cap could potentially profit his company, it's not a conflict of interest?
No, because that would be the same for any trucking company, anybody that does anything on roads.
Okay.
Well, legally, when I looked into that last year, so I just pointed out, it doesn't mean that the vote will not go in that favor. I'm just saying that is one of the things that we found.
Okay.
Thank you.
Appreciate your time. Thank you.
Any further testimony from the public? Hearing none. Commissioners, do you have any testimony or do you have anything you'd like to add to the conversation?
Well, I think, I appreciate, Mr. Loudon, I appreciate your concern. However, we did specifically ask for somebody from the freight and trucking industry, so they would, I don't know how we could avoid that potential. And we do have a very well-trained staff on making sure that if there are issues that would directly benefit that company, that they would be pulled from, recuse themselves from a vote specifically. And I can't imagine that one particular freight business would benefit from a transportation plan.
Can I make one more comment?
Please.
Before, and I mentioned with some other people, before the commissioners talked about having people serve on more than one advisory committee. At the time, I don't know if anything was ever passed on that or not, but he already chairs one committee in Belfair as well. So my concern is that his company could make suggestions that would make a difference, but they could profit from it. And I know you said it's not a conflict, but it sure seems to be.
No, legal, not illegal. There's a difference.
Okay.
Well, yeah, no, there's.
That's why there's personal input.
Yeah, just people, just because something doesn't legally meet the standard of conflict of interest does not mean that it's not a conflict. There's a difference between the two. Commissioner, any comments?
No, just one comment. I do remember the League of Women Voters gave us some suggestions for committee structure. What did we? Do you recall any of the input there on serving on two committees? I don't recall what the recommendation was.
Well, not the concept of serving on two committees. Not from that. I was on actually the tip cap at the time when that when that did come up, and it was established that if you were in a position, because up until then, this had never happened, if you were in a position where your company could actually somehow benefit, not just directly, but in any way, you had to acknowledge it to the group. Up until that time, that had never been the standard. As a matter of fact, when that was asked and brought in, one member said, wait a minute, I've been making money off of these projects for years. I would have to recuse myself, and we expressed and explained at the time that if it's direct money, yes, but if it's not, you have to at least acknowledge it. That's what occurred because of the League of Women Voters work that was done.
No, I'm just trying to recall did we adopt anything about serving on more than one
I wasn't here.
committee?
Not in my term that I'm familiar with.
And, yeah, it was before we came here, but even then, I believe the Bill for Sewer Advisory is not a standing committee as much as it is a ad hoc, and that's not the same. Like I said, those are temporary. Bill for Sewer Advisory Committee is a temporary committee.
Yeah, it is.
And if,
Can we table this till there could be further
Well,
discussion about it?
please hold up. So at this time, it's up to the commission. Do I hear a motion?
Well, go ahead.
Well, I was going to go ahead and make a motion to approve the appointment of Jeff Carey and Jack Johnson to the tip cap. I think just having somebody in the freight industry, and I guess it was very difficult to recruit into that particular interest group. So I do want somebody from the freight industry on that committee. It's very important to me.
And there's 9 people on the committee, correct?
Right now, there's 7. Yeah, this only brings us to 7. We're still shy of the full committee.
Okay, I'll second the motion. I don't have a problem with with a conflict, because I think it's an advisory committee, and it's I think your explanation was good, that you can't benefit individually, but you can as a member of the committee. If all freight was improved, you would certainly get a benefit as being in that business too. But and I believe you're correct that the Sewer Advisory Committee is a temporary committee, not a standing committee. So I'll go ahead and second the motion.
It's been moved and seconded for the approval of item number 8.2, the approval for the board to appoint Jeff Carey to represent the Belfair Allen urban growth area, and for Jack Johnson to represent the freight and trucking for 2015-2016 Transportation Improvement Program Citizens Advisory Panel, otherwise known as TIPCAP. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Aye. The motion passes. We have reached the point where we actually are there 2 minutes there, so we don't have to do our calendars first. At this point, we're going to go ahead and move into item number 9, which is our public hearing. The first one is we'll bring it to order, a public hearing to consider amending Resolution 58-13, increasing the Veterans Assistance amount to $800 per year and the catastrophic assistance to $300 per year. Staff, Frank Pinter.
Good morning, Commissioner. The Veterans Assistance Board has asked that we increase, or that the Commission approve an increase for the assistance to veterans of $800 per year, and for catastrophic assistance up to $300 a year. In the last number of years, the board has authorized a $100,000 budget for assistance to veterans, and it has been unable to meet that dollar amount. And by increasing the per individual assistance up to $800, they're hoping to be able to contribute the maximum or more of up to the $100,000 that they've been budgeted for assistance. They have the capacity to do that in the budget. In previous years, they've been unable to meet that amount, in some cases by less than 50%. And the increase would authorize or allow them to be able to budget the maximum amount out of what they receive as funding. Any questions?
Commissioners, any questions? Is there anybody in the audience who has any questions for staff?
I have one, just to be clear for the public. So frankly, the old limit for each individual veteran was $600. $600, so this would go from $600 to $800 per each individual. But the catastrophic award, so if an individual was awarded the $600, could they also be awarded the $300 catastrophic?
Yes.
Yes, okay, so one individual could receive $900.
12, if this passes.
$1,100.
$1,100.
Or 11.
800 plus 300.
And we're the ones in charge of math.
Yeah, and I'm trying to clear it up. Okay. Thank you.
Is there any questions from the audience? Hearing none, we will close that aspect of this, and we will open it up for public testimony. This is your opportunity to speak. Please come to the stand and let us know who you are.
My name is Ron Berg. I'm the chairman of the Veterans Advisory Board. Per the board's approval, I'm going to send forward a letter requesting the increase. Part of the reason we did that was the original resolution was drafted in 2004. It hasn't changed since then. Also, the need has never been greater to help the veterans. It's true this past year we used about a little over $51,000 of that money, the $100,000. 44% of it went for housing, 36% went for utilities, and 14% for food, and there was 6% for burial services. Our Veterans Service Office have doing an excellent job of meeting the needs of our veterans, and I think they need to show how much we really appreciate what they do for us. But I feel our resolution that we have is kind of limiting what they can do money-wise and what we can spend the money for. I think we should look down the road for helping in other areas, such as doing the stand down, helping with the stand down, maybe helping with the veterans court, helping improve the veterans the quality of life, allowing them to buy, say, personal hygiene items, feminine products, household and cleaning supplies, things like that. Other counties are doing that. They're helping them with transportation assistance, medical and prescription coverages, auto repair, appliance repair, clothing. We're also helping them obtain a state ID card, also helping them reinstate their driver's license. A number of the counties that we have, I did kind of a cross-check of counties. For example, Jefferson County, this is as of 2009, they have, their allotment is $1,500 per veteran. And they do they do food and what we call food and necessities. They also do rent, utilities, medical, and miscellaneous. Miscellaneous is like the burial service and anything else that's not covered under the other categories. Franklin County, they're at $1,000, and this was as of 2010. They do food, utilities, rental, and gasoline and other items. That's burial service and other things. Island County, they're at $1,500 per veteran, and they do food, housing, utilities, and medical also. And they have a miscellaneous fund. San Juan County, they're at $1,500. This is as of 2012. They do food, rent, utilities, medical, and miscellaneous also. So I think there's a lot of things we can do to help our veterans besides just giving them, help them with their rent and utilities. They have much other needs than just those. I think we need to look down the road to help in those situations.
Can I clarify something? You're not asking for us to include that in the resolution thing today, but to be open to it?
Kind of look down the road, that we may be coming back for other things and stuff like that, but I don't want to be a surprise.
Yes. Commissioner Jeffers?
So the monies are spent on the recommendation of your board. So will these recommendations be coming forward to us?
Probably will be, but we're going to, our committee's going to look at a number of things to help our veterans down the road. We're a young committee, so we're just getting started. We want to make sure we're doing the best to help our veterans as we can.
Okay.
All right.
Commissioner, do you have a question?
No, I think that'd be great if you come back with some other recommendations on what we can do. I think over the years, and I've been doing this job for 10 years, we have not paid enough attention to the rules, what we could do. I think we've kind of gone along. We've made a good change, I think, over the years. We don't name the individuals that's receiving the assistance. I think that's a good thing. I think that encourages more people to come forward. There's a lot of pride out there in your community, and when people get assistance, they often feel that, just go to somebody else. I can get by, and that's not the attitude we'd like to see. We want to truly assist the needy. And the committee's done a great job. So I think that any more suggestions that you could bring to us, I think would be more than welcome.
We greatly look forward to your recommendations. I think you'll find that we were hardly even questioned anything that you sent forward. But in closing, I want to say thank you so very much for your service, not just to our nation, but to my family and to our way of life. And God bless you, my friend. Thank you very much for what you've done. Thank you. Is there anybody further who would like to testify? Tom?
Yes, thank you, Commissioner Tom Davis. I want to bring attention to the whole package that I gave you, because there's some discussion about, and rightfully so, how much of these monies actually go to services. Almost all these monies go to services. Everybody from Memorial Hall is a volunteer, and they're consistent volunteers. They don't come in and spend 6 weeks and then you don't see them. They're there. They're going to be there for as long as they could possibly be there. Our biggest problem, of course, is eventually we're going to have to replace people. So they're going to leave some big shoes to replace. But what I want to bring attention to is kind of some old school record keeping that you see at the back of this thing. And when I looked at it, I said, it just doesn't get better than this. When you look at this, there's no question in your mind of where the money's going and for what particular thing, broken down into season, broken down into month, almost broken down into rainy days. It's fantastic. And so this is the kind of response, this is the kind of service that the veterans do for their fellow veterans. And it should be, of course, if it can't be, but it would be a great model for other funds, because we don't have we don't have salaries, we don't chase careers and so on. And I'm not part of that group, I'm not part of that assistance group, I sit in on the meetings, but I am absolutely in admiration of the people who show up consistently to do this. They're also incredibly prudent, because you don't want to have any programs that you can't fund. You don't want to be aggressive and say, okay, we want to do more, and then run out of money and have to come back to the commission for supplemental appropriation. We don't play that. What happens here is that people come for the funding first, then they carefully analyze whether or not they can have additional programs, and then come here and have the programs approved, or the not only for utilities and such, but now for gas and toiletries and so on. So this is a very well thought out organization, and I think they deserve recognition from the general public. These are the people who quietly, day after day, take care of business. Thank you.
Thank you, Tom. Hey, Tom, on this, on your sheet that you put together, I'm just curious about a couple things, if you don't mind. You have a breakdown when it shows housing. It doesn't have years because you did a 2014 on the top there, but it shows spring, fall, and winter, $13,769 for housing. Then you have the spring that drops down to $7,900. Then you have winter at $11,000, and then you have the fall before that of $1,000. I'm just curious why we think it increases so heavily.
Ron and I had a discussion along those lines, and this is Ron's chart, and he should answer that question.
Well, perhaps it's not even truly a question as much as it is. Can you please eventually inform us of that and see if we can find a way to actually change that aspect, because the difference is so great looking at your chart that it's blaringly obvious that we probably need to do something.
This jumped out at us when
Yeah,
it was put in chart form.
as
We
it
said
did me.
We need to have a discussion about that, but that was yesterday morning.
Okay. So maybe you can include us. Commissioners, do you have any statements for?
Well, we have a number of the Veteran Services officers here in the audience. First of all, Freddie here, and Ms. Grayson, and Harry, and Pete. Who else am I missing? Ron. Perhaps some of you can talk about the trends you see and the seasonal trends.
Well,
and tell us about
first we have somebody else that was waiting to speak. You.
That's who I'm speaking.
Oh, I thought you were saying everybody. You wanted them all to come up. Oh.
I'm Jacqueline Mallon, and I'm one of the service officers. And my comment is that because of the kind of rigid constraints that we have, food, housing, utilities, and burial, there are times when the veterans come to us and they have an emergent need that we can't cover. So we play politics amongst ourselves, saying, all right, we can help you with food to this amount. Can you pay that? Can you use that amount out of your own funds to pay for this? We're robbing Peter to pay Paul, or something or other. And it gets to be mind-boggling, and it also wears on you the fact that we're rigidly set into those categories, and yet there are other needs that come to us, and like I say, we juggle to find a way so that they can receive help, and yet they can also handle the other problem. And the other thing that I'm seeing is that 20 years ago when I started, it was consistently a high rent for an apartment was $500. Now you look in the newspaper and you're lucky to see if anything under $700. And let's face it, prices have increased. Their limited income has increased, but not to the same percentage. Or maybe it's the same percentage, but 0% of zero is still zero. And so they're always going to be playing catch up. I served somebody yesterday whose wife has been going to Harborview for brain surgery. She's gone at least twice, and the transportation costs alone for them to drive from the Shelton area to Harborview and back and take care of 4 teenagers at home, they're playing catch up on everything. The gasoline prices are overwhelming them, and yet you don't want to see them not go see their family at Harborview. I was in that position 2 years ago. I didn't go because my granddaughter had an aneurysm, and she was up there almost the entire summer and fall of 2013. I didn't go because I was coughing, and I know that hospital would not have let me up in the ICU with me coughing and her with an open brain. And I'm sure they have that kind of consideration. The other part of it, like he says, parking there is $30 a day. So there you are. They get behind on their utilities, they get behind on their rent, or whatever, and they come to us, and they come to us reluctantly. As Commissioner Sheldon says, there's an awful lot of pride out there. We deal with that all the time. I don't want to come here, but my standard reply is, you earned this the hard way. And they did. So if the allocation can be increased to $800, it would be a great help.
Ms. Mallon, may I?
Please.
Do you have some sort of in your gut idea why the assistance for the housing goes up so high in the winter fall period? You know, where that's predominantly how you're assisting?
Down. If there's families with children, it's school expenses. Okay. And then of course, and then the holidays are coming.
Heating supplies.
And the heating costs go up. So you pay one or the other. And sometimes, as a service officer, we're stuck between a rock and a hard place, trying to keep them in their home so that they have a home. But they also need to have the health issues of heat, and water. If they're not on a well, and even if they're on a well, they still need electricity. So but those are some of the considerations. First off, we've got the kids going back to school, the holidays coming up, property taxes, and there we go.
I think you hit the nail on the head, though, what you said, they have to make choices, basically, on what to pay for, especially during that time of year. There's a lot of choices that have to occur.
Yeah.
And
Unfortunately, if somebody has just lost a job or has just started a job, there you go. They're constantly playing catch up in one form or another. And so, again, sometimes we're the court of last resort for them. We do refer them to other services if we can. And I have to do some work, I have to contact Community Action Council to see what their income guidelines are, because I think our guidelines are higher than theirs, so a lot of times we can't refer them to Community Action Council for energy assistance, so.
again,
Mr. Chairman, just a one
yes,
question.
please.
Jacqueline, you've been doing this for a long time as a
Yes.
service officer. Now, you also served years ago on the Housing Authority,
Yes,
is that right?
22 years,
22 years doing that.
yes.
Oh, thank you.
And I understand you're auxiliary?
Yes, I am the VFW auxiliary here. I hold the honored position as secretary, and then somebody roped me into being secretary and deputy chief of staff at the district level.
Congratulations.
Well,
Thank you for all the time
Yeah.
you spent.
thank you.
Well, it's been my honor for 22 years to be a politically appointed volunteer. You get to go this and that, the other thing, yeah. But the housing authority pays for it, I don't.
Well, thank you again for all the support you've given. Thank you. Is there anybody else who would like to testify at this time?
No.
Please, please come join.
Good morning. My name is Pete Lasharenko, and I'm one of the service officers, lead service officers down at the Veteran Service Office. To touch on what everybody said about raising the fund up to $800, that is a good thing. I've been doing this since 2007. When I got my feet wet, jumped into it, the assistance fund at that time was just still at $300. Shortly thereafter, it bumped up to $600. Times have changed. Living has gotten more expensive. We do have a lot of elderly veterans that are on minimal income that come in for the assistance that needs the help. We have a lot of Vietnam era veterans like myself, Lebanon and Desert Storm. And the most important thing, we've had a war on terror on two fronts. Afghanistan and Iraq. These boys and girls are coming home. They've been coming home. I see a lot of them come in, male, female. Some of them are injured, some of them aren't. They all have one thing in common. They don't have a job because either work was not there when they got home, or they had to relocate to an area where it's a little cheaper to live because they couldn't make it where they were at, but yet here, they still don't have a job yet. And I want everybody to think about this. In 5 more years, look at what the veteran population of all of Mason County is going to boom to. It's going to jump up there. I talk to a lot of veterans from all over. They all have one thing in common. They like to come to Mason County because it's out of everywhere in the state of Washington, not only is it one of the nicest, friendliest, but it's also one of the cheapest places to live. And a lot of them are coming here. Sad part is there's not a lot of employment for them. They got to go to places like Seattle, Bremerton. I used to work in the yard in Bremerton. You know, it's rough out there. And we have a lot of these men and women that wear a uniform that have been fighting the war on terror and coming home to sometimes nothing, sometimes have to pack up and leave. And increasing this will help in a big way. It's not a big major increase, but that little bit right now will be a big help, and it will go a long way. And like Ron was saying about later on down the road, addressing other issues, toiletries, hygiene, stuff like that, that's a good thing, because a lot of the other counties do provide that. They give them that voucher, or they give them that check stamped hygiene products only. And they go buy their month's worth of soap, shampoo, male, female hygiene gear, stuff for them, for the parents, for the kids. It does help. I get phone calls on my home phone at home. I can't pay for my prescription medications. I gotta go to Walmart or Fred Meyer Pharmacy, and I owe $20, $30 for my prescriptions, or $10. I just don't have it. Unfortunately, we don't have nothing set up to help them with that, unless we do it out of pocket. It's been done in the past. There are sometimes I'll refer them to some other people out of Olympia that have their hands in programs that we wish we had, but we just don't, because they're at state level, they're paid by a state level, and they have a whole different program. But like, you know, like Ron was saying, you know, these are some other issues that we need to really start looking at. And I've always gone with my gut feeling. I said it in 2007, we're going to boom to now, and we have, and I can see it happening again in about another 5 years. We're going to, Mason County is going to, all of Mason County, even the outer areas of Mason County, you're going to have a real big veteran population. And it needs some help, especially if they're in between jobs, or one person's unemployed and the other one can't work for whatever reason. The wife, spouse can't hold employment, you know, due to disability or whatever. So, you know, it's people that struggle. I mean, everybody in the whole, we're all struggling. But this is a community that's, the veterans community is hit hard. And a lot of times, if you look at reports, read reports nationwide, they're looked at, but a lot of the large stuff is looked at, but a lot of the small stuff, like the old saying, you're not going to miss the big stuff, you're going to miss the small stuff. And that's what we got to look at harder, pay more attention to detail on, is the small stuff. What do they need now? What could we do for them now? How could we help them today? I mean, you know, the program's a good hand up. It's not a handout. It's a hand up. And a lot of times that hand up goes a long way.
I think
And
maybe
remember that.
I think maybe because of your work on that, your work and the work of others, that on that list of why they come here might be because we're veteran friendly, because of what you've accomplished. Commissioners, any questions?
Thank you very much.
Peter, again, I'm aware of all the work you've done, and I want to thank you for what you've done for the veterans, this nation, my family, and our communities in our way of life. Thank you, my friend. God bless you. Anybody further who would like to testify on this issue? Harry Taschel, please.
Are you going to let Harry talk?
I am perhaps one of his biggest fans before he even speaks. I understand it, and I know all the work that all you guys do, but I've been watching Harry because he does what he does where I live. I've been watching him provide for so many people that had no clue that there was even anything to provide, that anybody or anything that they could even get.
You gotta watch Harry.
No, I didn't say that. I admit, you have to watch Harry.
Yeah. Anyway, being the only veteran service officer in the north end of the county, I do all of the veterans assistance up there. According to Ron, about a quarter of the veterans assistance is done up there. We have, because of where my office is, the ability to pull in other things. Like Tyler
the homeless advocate, and other things. But we end up, already this year, I've had 2 people that have maxed out. That means they're done for the rest of the year, no matter what occurs to them. A couple extra $100, you know, we can figure out where we can put it. The other thing is, I have a QFC credit card for gas. I don't let them know it unless it's a very, you know, and I'll take them over across the street and give them $20 worth of gas if they need it. It's reimbursed from the American Legion up there. But still, there's a lot of need out there, and we're just scratching the surface. I know that for a fact. So anything that we can do to help the veterans is better off. And thank you.
Anything for Harry?
Thank you for your
Harry,
service.
and I hope you, Commissioner, I apologize, and I hope you indulge me. Harry Taschel, again, thank you so much, my friend, for everything you've done for the veterans of our community and for this nation, my family, and all of our way of life. God bless you, my friend. Is there anybody else who would wish to testify at this time? Anything further? Hearing none, I will close the public testimony and we will move to commissioner deliberation or commissioner discussion.
Well, I fully support the increase. I wish that we were actually changing and adding to the types of assistance that can be done, but I really hope you guys will get on that fast. I wish we could do it at the same time, but these things, of course, have to be thoughtful, and you folks need to discuss that, but I'm in full favor of this.
I am as well, Mr. Chairman. I think it's been a really great public hearing. This is what we ought to do at public hearings. Hear from people, get good suggestions, make a plan, and really appreciate you coming out today. It makes a big difference. Thank you.
With that being said, who would like the honor of making this motion?
Mr. Chairman, thank you. I move that the Board of County Commissioners amend Resolution 5813, increasing the amount awarded to eligible veterans to $800 and catastrophic award to $300 per calendar year from the Veterans Assistance Fund as recommended by the Veterans Advisory Board, and update the operating guidelines.
I'll second that motion.
It has been moved and seconded for the approval to amend Resolution 58-13, increasing the amount awarded to eligible veterans to $800 and the catastrophic award to $300 per calendar year for the Veterans Assistance Fund as recommended by the Veterans Advisory Board, and the update the operating guidelines. Any discussion? All in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Thank you, everyone.
And again, to the rest of you who did not testify, from the bottom of our heart, all of us, thank you. Thank you so much for everything you've done. We recognize that you've given up so much so that we could have so much. And my family and my kids can be so well protected and live in such a society that I can be so proud of. Thank you for your service to this nation, to your other veterans, to my family, and to our way of life. God bless all of you. With that being said, we'll move on to item number 9.2, public hearing to consider amendments to Title 17, adding the new chapter 17.90 multifamily housing tax incentive program to the Mason County Zoning Code. Staff Barbara Atkins will call this one.
Mr. Chairman, do you want to take like a 5-minute break before we
I would.
start this one, second hearing?
We are in a 5-minute break.
Great.
Oh, I thought you saw me. I'm sorry. Okay. Welcome back, everybody. We're going to come back into session. This is the public hearing. Item on your agenda is 9.2, amendments to Title 17, adding Chapter 17.90 multifamily housing tax incentive program to the Mason County Zoning Code. Staff Barbara Atkins.
Thank you.
I just want to say first off that this is a brand new section of code for us. It's a brand new area that our community development department has not gone into before. It's a mixture of land use with taxes. So we're kind of working with the assessor who's here today as well, and getting a lot of help from the commissioners, especially Commissioner Jeffries helping me with this language, because I don't completely understand ad valorem taxes. It's kind of not what we do, but I understand the natural progression that it would end up in my department, but we'll have to work as a team. So to give you a little bit of background on how we got here, I'll read you something from the ordinance. Washington State Law, the Revised Code of Washington, Chapter 8414, provides the exemption from ad valorem property taxation for the value of eligible improvements associated with qualified multifamily housing located in residential targeted areas, and authorizes the county to designate such residential targeted areas. We went through this process back in June with the board. We have, the maps are actually been sitting here for 8 months now because I keep forgetting to take them back. But we designated all eligible zoning districts within all 3 UGAs. So those are the target areas that were eventually adopted under Ordinance 4114. All these areas were adopted. Under the state law, the next progression is once you establish the areas that you're going to work in, the next step is to put together your codes and your regulations to implement this program in these areas. So today's hearing is to go over 2 basic things. One being the new chapter added to the zoning code of the Unified County Code, which would be 17.90. And the second item, which we have not talked about as much, is the fee schedule that goes along with the cost for implementing that program. I have some handouts if nobody has the attachments, but starting with attachment A, which is the Title 17 zoning and the proposed regulations. It starts off with a new chapter 17.70, multifamily housing tax incentive programs, broken down into 7 sections. The first section basically just goes over the purpose. And in a nutshell, the program is intended to provide incentives to developers to construct new multifamily housing, increasing the number of affordable housing units for low to moderate income residents in the urban areas of certain rural counties. The authority is outlined in the next section, section 3.0.030. Is the definition section that basically defines what the words are that are used throughout this chapter. Section 1790.040 talks about the residential targeted areas designation criteria. And that basically explains how those areas were chosen, the process that we went through. The standards and the guidelines in the next section that address those areas, and then what the areas are. The Allen, the Belfair, and the Shelton residential targeted areas, and includes all the zoning districts within those areas that are eligible for multifamily housing. And those were all part of the initial process that we went through when we designated those. So then we get down to kind of where we're at today, which is Section 70, property tax exemptions, the requirements in the process. This kind of discusses the whole framework of how the process works. If you look at B, which is at the bottom of that page, the duration of the exemption is 8 or 12 years. And that gets described a little bit further as we go down. On the next page, we get down to D, on page 4, project eligibility. This first section, under I, talks about the 8-year exemption. So for a project to be eligible for an 8-year exemption, the applicant must commit to renting or selling at least 20% of the multifamily housing units as affordable housing units to low and moderate income families, respectively. And there's been some typos here we cleaned up, I'll go over in a minute. And the property must satisfy the commitment and any additional affordability and income eligibility conditions adopted under this chapter. Below that, it talks about the size. A minimum of 4 new units must be constructed, or at least 4 additional multifamily units must be added to existing occupied multifamily housing. Permanent residential occupancy, at least 50% of the space designated for multifamily housing must be provided for permanent residential occupancy, as defined in 7.90.030. The completion date is 3 years from the date of approval. And there's a compliance with the guidelines and the standards that apply to the building and the housing codes that must be met for new construction or rehabilitation. When you get down towards the bottom of the page, you'll see 2I, which talks about the 12-year exemption. Under this, basically the same requirements for the 8-year are the same, with one difference. The applicant must commit to renting or selling at least 50% of the multifamily housing units as affordable housing units to low and moderate income households, and the property must satisfy the additional affordability and income eligibility conditions adopted under this chapter. Now, the rest of the chapter goes through the application process, the kind of materials that we would need to have submitted to the Department of Community Development to review. It goes through the procedure, the timelines, how we review, what it is that we would need to review, including floor plans and site plans, verification of the oath or affirmation of the income condition that they've given us on the low to moderate income housing, and the rehabilitation and development standards that all go with this. It's pretty typical. And then it goes through kind of the process that once this is approved. If the application is approved, the applicant shall enter into a contract with the county, subject to approval by resolution of the commission regarding the terms and conditions of the project. Upon a commissioner approval of the contract, the director, which would be me, would issue a conditional certificate of acceptance of tax exemption. And this allows them to move forward for 3 years to complete the project. Once the project is complete, an application for final certificate is applied for and issued. And I think that it is this point, and I apologize for not knowing all this stuff, this is all kind of new. I think at that point, that is when that condition would move on to the assessor's office for evaluating the ad valorem tax breaks that they would get on that project. There's an annual compliance review that the department is responsible for to make sure that they are maintaining what they agreed to maintain under the contract. There are provisions for canceling the tax exemption should the applicant not be meeting the conditions of the agreement that they entered into with the county. There's also an appeal process for denials. The attachment B is the fee schedule, which has been, to this point, a little less discussed, but it is on the 3rd page. There's a section on the multifamily that has the development, review, inspection, and application processing fee of $1,135, which is pretty low compared to the other jurisdictions that do it. And the reason that that amount is in here is because I used an amount that is compatible with other permits or other processes that we have to take to a public review for the commission. And until we kind of get completely up and running with this to see how labor intensive it is, we're kind of just throwing out a number there that seems to be in line with other types of permits that require public hearings, the processing of public hearings. And then the annual monitoring fee of $70, which is pretty standard for an hourly rate to kind of keep up and make sure that they're holding up their end of the bargain as far as the contract that they sign with the county. yesterday's briefing that I put in a separate document and did not include in here because this was released to the public and those weren't, so it would be appropriate to discuss those now. So one of the items that we had talked about was manipulating the definition of low to moderate income housing when it comes to the, let's see here, the adjusted income levels. And again, I apologize, I'm not that familiar with how these work, and I've got Melody behind me to jump up and correct me. But what I've done on the separate sheet here is to look at the definitions, and for low and moderate, I left them alone the way they were, but I also added a section that the eligibility requirements for the 12-year exemption projects will vary, and to see that section, I also added that under moderate. Because what we've done with the requirements for the 12-year, we left the 8-year alone, but when you get down to the 12-year exemption eligibility, the low to moderate income households with incomes at or below 50% of the median area income as defined by HUD, and moderate income households with incomes at or below 80% as defined by HUD, which is different than the original definition, which has it at 80 and 115%. So those were some amendments made in our discussions yesterday. In the case, and also continuing on with the 12-year exemption, in the case of projects intended exclusively for owner occupation, the minimum requirement of the house, of the subsection, may be satisfied solely through housing affordability to moderate income households whose adjusted income is more than 80%, but is at or below 115%. So that actually, when you apply it to owner occupied, it would revert back to those original definitions, and the lower numbers would apply to rentals and not owner occupied. Am I understanding that correctly?
So, Mr. Chairman, just a question?
Please.
Okay, so Barb, at this point, the effect of this amendment would be to lower the income requirement, make it easier for lower income people to qualify, or not for the owner of this, because we're talking about the owner building that and the requirements they would have for the residents. So does it lower the income or raise it? It seems to lower it.
Is that what it does?
Yeah,
Okay.
It makes it.
It lowers the
people-
rent price is what it does.
Yeah.
Because it has to be affordable
Right.
to people with lower incomes than when were originally contemplated.
Yeah, so it would, given the pyramid of high income down to low income down here, more people would be eligible under this amendment.
No, the opposite. The eligible to receive, think of it in a sense like a pyramid.
Yeah.
Right now, to get 8 years, they'd be at this line,
Mhm.
that they only have to produce properties that are at a certain standard, which would be the 80% to the 115. But to get the 12-year, they have to bring their number down to the 50% of the HUD marker in order to get the extra 4 years. So it doesn't actually change how many people can apply for it. What it does is make it a little harder. If they want to get 12 years, they have to bring those numbers and make it accessible to more people.
To more people, I got you.
Yes.
Okay, so, but, yeah.
Okay. Any further,
No, I did get some comments from a constituent yesterday. She had some suggestions that, a lot of them were grammatical, and I did go ahead and take our, the ordinance itself and clean it up a bit, because she had some good points about being consistent with the language, so I went ahead and made some edits to make that read better. She also had some comments that were really policy decisions inside the text regulations itself, so I did not incorporate those, and I would just give her the opportunity to talk to you about how she would see those numbers, because her numbers that you were just talking about are a little different than what we had talked about yesterday, so I'll leave that to you. But the suggestions to clean up the ordinance were good ones, so I did do that, and I'll have to create a clean copy for Tim to sign should you want to put this through today. But I will let her talk about her changes to your numbers and see if that's where you want to go with those. But that's what I have on this.
Thank you, Barbara. Commissioners, do you have any questions of staff before I allow public to ask questions of staff?
I do have a question. So on going to the fee schedule, the annual monitoring at $70, you say you came upon that dollar amount because?
That is our standard hourly rate for the planners. Whatever we do, that's just the hourly rate.
Okay, so the assumption is it would take about an hour to confirm compliance.
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you for your consistent listening and all the different changes we've made over the years, or over the months on this issue. And I just want to thank you for all your effort on that, on an area that you
Knew absolutely nothing about.
knew nothing about.
But we're learning. And
Other questions from the commission? Is there anybody in the audience who has a question for staff in regards to her testimony? Yes.
Yes, Barbara, just some clarification on, at least on what I downloaded on page 4. It was paragraph 2, and where it says percentage of affordable housing units. I think it's just a language that might have been corrected in your final copy, but it says the applicant must commit to renting or selling at least 20% of the multifamily housing units as affordable housing units to low and moderate income households. Should it not be to low and or moderate income households, because he can satisfy that requirement either by low income households and or moderate income households? Or is that correct? Do they have to have both low and moderate income households to comply and get the exemption?
I think it could be or. Would that be?
I think or would be a good change, because I don't see that you'd have to have both. Because one could make a
Either or.
yeah.
You have any issue with that, Commissioner?
Or?
That's what I said, and or, because he could have both, or he could have either one, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
You could have a mix.
Yeah,
Okay.
we're comfortable.
I didn't know if there was an intention there.
Any further questions for staff in regards to staff's testimony? Hearing none, we'll close that part of the hearing and move into public testimony. Is there anybody who would like to testify at this time? Marilyn.
Marilyn Vogler, 420 East Poplar. And I thank you for the invitation to address my comments. But one of the things I wanted to say was that this has been a really positive evolution of the text that I see. And Commissioner Sheldon, when you made a comment about we need to look at the rules really closely to see what we can do, this was a good example, because I initially talked with commissioners about the way the affordability was calculated, and Commissioner Jeffries found a model in Spokane, and yes, we can do this, they said, and made adjustments. And so even though their numbers are not the same as I would have written it, I think it's a really fine compromise, and I support this wholeheartedly. I also think it's really important that we develop committed, affordable housing. In everything I've heard, whether it's dependency counseling or finding employment, housing seems to be the bottom line that makes intervention successful or not. And in fact, I was sitting next to Leon Hagens from the mental health professionals who said, you know, it's not just permanent housing, it's even temporary. He was telling me he had driven people from Shelton to Olympia to the Salvation Army because they needed a night or two in a shelter bed. And so this is a beginning. I'm enthused about it. It's only a beginning, and there are a number of very exciting things, I think, going on with regard to housing in Shelton and Mason County. Discussions about tiny homes and Shelton's planned unit development, and really thinking outside the box and thinking about what we can do. So thank you for this.
Thank you. Any questions, comments from Marilyn? Hearing no, go ahead.
My comments are thank you for your attention to this and for your edits and your suggestions and just being involved in the whole process. Appreciate that.
Any further testimony at this time? No further testimony. We will close the testimony, public testimony, and move into commission deliberation.
Well, I guess first off, I want to thank everyone that's been so involved in this, and just a little bit of history. This started with a suggestion by Commissioner Jeffries that resulted in a bill in the legislature. It wasn't an easy bill to pass because the Washington Association of Cities did not like this idea. So we worked with them very hard, and you'll notice that in the definitions, this only applies to to counties with a population between 50,000 and 71,000 and bordering Puget Sound. So there is one county that qualifies. So we're a little bit in the spotlight here because I think other counties, small counties, are looking at this and seeing how we're going to do. But I'm really energized by the fact that we have this before us today. It's a big start. It's, you know, Marilyn made a comment about, you know, someone had to take someone to another county for shelter. You know, there was a time when primarily women had to call, you know, for domestic violence assistance, that had to be transported to Thurston County. And now we have our own domestic violence shelter. There's a lot of things we don't have that we're finally getting, and I think this is just another great example of something that's going to be it is very necessary, but it's going to serve a need that we'll find that's even a bigger need. And it seems like housing issues are finding a resurgence again in Mason County. So I had to make that comment, and I'll be quiet. But when Jacqueline Mallon came forward, there's a lady that's been working on housing issues for almost 25 years. So
There you go.
we're getting there.
Commissioner Jeffries?
You know, one of the things I'm surprised the question didn't come up, but I just want to share with people what those income limits mean, what the actual numbers are.
Yeah.
So 80% of the median income for a family of 4 is $47,450. So that's what we're going to define as moderate income for the 12-year eligibility. Low income will be, for a family of 4, $29,650. They're almost $30,000. So those are kind of high still for this area, from what I understand. But we do need to make sure that this thing can work and pencil out for our builder as well. And if you know anything about building and development, every inch is quantified, and you have to hit a certain price point, and you have to make sure that meets your market. And so I think that your suggestions, both of your suggestions, that we lower those income eligibilities and in tandem with a 12-year exemption carrot you know, to do that, and then increasing the number of units, I think that's a nice compromise all around. This code solves or addresses 3 major issues, I think, in Mason County. One, we don't have enough multifamily housing. We just don't have enough. People are renting single-wide trailers. They're renting some pretty substandard housing just for the simple fact there aren't enough apartments to rent. apartments are so important for flexibility too. You know, if you're just moving into an area, you just got a job here, and you know, you might be buying down the line, you know, you're going to need to rent. So we just need that. We need the sewer hookups. We need the sewer hookups in Belfair. And so this will add number of housing units. And 3, it's going to make the areas that attractive for retail development, because what folks do is they count rooftops. How many customers may I potentially have within a certain radius? So this is an economic development tool. This is a housing affordability tool, as well as it'll help sustain our infrastructure. So I think this is probably one of the best laws coming out of out of the legislature in a long time. And one of the things I love in the intent language in the RCW is that it says the legislature recognizes there aren't enough incentives to encourage development in our urban growth areas. And we don't have a lot of tax incentives in Washington State because we don't have an income tax. It's probably one of the primary reasons. And so we're very thankful that we do have the opportunity to present a tax incentive to encourage and incentivize the kind of things we need to solve our public policy issues. So with that being said, thank you everybody for your work on this.
I will echo some of the comments that were just made. One of the discussions we had yesterday was the decision to put forward this amendment that is going to be before us. That one of the discussions was whether or not to extend that 50% mark down to owner-occupied residences, and we thought that that may be a lot harder to do, to make that price point when you try to sell it individually. That's why that was not extended, or the offer was not to extend it into that arena, where it's different on a rental to be able to recoup your funds, because it's ongoing money coming in on a regular basis. I would like to ask for a process from the commission before we go any further, and that is that our first motion, if you choose to do it, be to include the amendment into the package before voting on the whole package. So if you will indulge me, I would prefer that we handle it that way first.
Mr. Chairman, I move that the document distributed by our Community Development Director be included in the proposed ordinance.
A second.
It's been moved and seconded to include this proposed, this draft changes to the proposed ordinance into the proposed ordinance for future consideration. Any discussion? All in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Aye. And now that that's passed, I'm going to say if the next one does pass, this motion does pass, Marilyn Vogler, I want to thank you and point out that you are a perfect example of the community working with the commission to have a direct impact, because if this now passes, you will have had a direct impact on spurring and encouraging multifamily low-income housing, and it's very much appreciated. Thank you for all the hard work that you put into that.
Mr. Chair, I think we have another amendment to do based on the testimony or the question from Tom Davis.
Mm-hmm.
So, Mr. Chair, I would move that we would amend page 4, section D, I2, on the third line following the first and, to add /or.
I'll second the amendment, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, it has been moved and seconded that we amend the proposal on page 4, section D, line 2, to include /or. Yes.
Do you want that to follow suit down in the 12-year as well? It's the same language.
Yes, I would think so,
Yes.
Commissioners?
Yes.
That, yes, the motion applies to where applicable. Any discussion? You made the motion, was there a second?
Yes.
Okay, second. Any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Aye, the motion carries. I will entertain a motion, if you are so inclined, for the passage of the entire...
Mr. Chairman, I move that the Mason County Board of Commissioners approves the proposed ordinance as amended, amending Title 17, adding new Chapter 17.90 Multifamily Housing Tax Incentive Program to the Mason County Zoning Code.
I'll second.
It has been moved and seconded. The Mason County Board of Commissioners to approve the proposed ordinance amending Title 17, adding the new Chapter 17.90 to multifamily housing tax incentive programs to the Mason County zoning code. Any further discussion?
Just the word that, as amended, I think.
As amended.
Yeah.
Any further discussion? Hearing none, all in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Aye. The motion carries. Let the building begin.
By the way, only 4 years left. We have a 5-year, due date to be able to take in these, so.
So bring all your application. Contact that person we talked about, perhaps about microhousing. Maryland also brought forth some more information on microhousing, which might be very beneficial. The idea of being able to have smaller housings for those that could use it. Square footage being everything, that would affect how much it costs to rent or build. With that being said, we are finished with our public hearing aspect of this meeting, and we will move on to item number 10. Which is other business, department heads and elected officials. Are there any elected officials in the building who would like to testify or speak at this time? Are there any other department heads who would like to testify or speak at this time? Hearing none, we will go ahead and move back on to item number 11, board's report and calendar. Who would like to go first?
I'd be happy to go first. So last week, following our commission meeting, I met with 3 legislators regarding Hood Canal Bridge and its potential effect on the low dissolved oxygen and or salmon migration. Then on the 4th of February, I met with Mike and Jerry Purvis, owners of the IGA in Hoodsport, phenomenal business owners. We talked about their business as well as their hopes and dreams and plans for the community of Hoodsport. I met with Julie Gray of the Rodeo Association. We're working on making sure they have a location for the rodeo this year. And then that evening at Alderbrook, there was a presentation by Blue Collar Agency, who we just approved their contract today, of their marketing strategy for tourism development. The 5th, I met with the Foundation of Hope organization, who are supporting our problem-solving courts. And then we had the Lodging Tax Advisory Committee meeting to review and receive recommendation on Blue Collar Agency's proposal. Then met on Friday the 6th with staff members of Indigent Defense, Public Works, and then MACECOM. And then, let's see, yesterday we had, and then Sunday was the Mason Transit Authority's annual employee meeting. Got a chance to meet with some of the employees of that organization. We had our briefings yesterday. This morning, I attended the Capital Land Trust's annual conservation breakfast, where Mason County, along with 21 organizations, were recognized and acknowledged for their effort and their work in the Oakland Bay Golf Course acquisition, which is now a conservation area. 21 organizations involved in that. It just tells you what it takes. Most notably, the Mason County Conservation District, as well as the Taylor Shellfish and the Squaxin Tribe and Trust for Public Land, and of course the Washington State Legislature through the Washington Recreation and Wildlife. So appreciate that. Found out that $10 million worth of shellfish production come out of Oakland Bay every year. That's pretty amazing. We have to. We need to celebrate, and I'm just so delighted that we are doing what we can to maintain the water quality. This afternoon, we have a finance committee, and then I'll be meeting with going to the Housing Coalition meeting this afternoon. And then I'm meeting with the owners and manager of Ridge Motorsports. And then I'm speaking to the Mason County Bar Association, and then meeting with a legislator or 2 on Wednesday afternoon, and then Washington State Association of County staff. Thursday, I will be testifying at the legislature on a bill that would fund our on-site septic operations and maintenance and new PIC program, or Pollution Identification Control Program, through a septic fee. Meeting with the Hood Canal Coordinating Council Director, and then we have our Skokomish General Investigation Executive Committee meeting that afternoon. And then meeting with our legal counsel on Friday, and then economic development lunch on Friday as well. And then I will be gone for 2 weeks on vacation and back on March 2nd.
That's why we made her read the long one.
They're punishing me for going on vacation.
Commissioner Sheldon?
Sure, and Commissioner Jeffries, what day is that Skokomish investigation?
That is Thursday.
Thursday, the
12th. At 2. I have 1:30.
I have 1:30 to 3:30.
Okay, I won't be able to make that, but, okay, I'll just go back to last meeting. I did have, during that week, I had some meetings also with Ridge Motorsports. Did meet with Joe Mentor and Scott Brewer from Hood Canal Coordinating Council about the issue of the floating bridge and what it might do to the migration of steelhead. I've learned that steelhead migrate on the top of the water, not down very deep, and they're looking for $500,000 for a study. That sounds like a lot of money, but I did talk to some other fisheries people, and it is a phenomenon that might be. It seems that any time that you get into investigating what nature, why nature is what it is, there's some surprises, big surprises. So it stands a chance of being fun, as we'll see in Olympia. Had a couple other constituents down, a couple issues coming up on different bills today, so I won't really get into all those, but I did attend a Public Power Council meeting last week in Portland. Spent one night down there, and that was very interesting. It was basically with the Public Power Council, it was Predator Week, and we learned a lot about how much of your power bill goes to the issue of sea lions, birds, all the things that prey on salmon as they wind their way back to the spawning grounds. Let's see, session will probably start to intensify here next week, as cutoff for policy bills out of the Senate or the House is Friday the 20th, but I will be here for the next two meetings because you'll be gone for sure. And I won't be able to make the Olympic Region Clean Air Authority meeting on Wednesday. Okay, so we will not be represented just at that meeting. I don't think, I looked at the agenda, it doesn't look like it's a game changer to not be there. Thank you.
Okay. Let's see. I met with a developer about bringing another business up into the North Mason region. But while I was there, I actually ran into another person, and they are a new business owner technically, and they actually have been a long-time business owner, but now they own all of it. And I spent my time working with them to try and talk to them about moving their corporate headquarters here.
There you go.
And they originally were looking at Seattle, but now they are going to look at us, and they're very thankful for us because there's been contact in many different areas, not just by myself, but also by Commissioner Jeffries and by the EDC and others. And they're saying, where did we just land? We landed a place that actually wants us and cares about us. And so he told me straight out that he is going to consider it, and they are going to look at it. And so we'll connect them with EDC some more and have them move forward, see if we can't bring that corporate headquarters here. They actually have quite a few. I think it's like 8 different locations with quite a few different employees. So it would amount for a lot of money. Then next, let's see, Legislative Steering Committee. And then I went and did a meeting with EPA in regards to some of our salmon funding and the like. I want to add something on the bridge and the discussion on the habitat impact that it has had. There are monitors that go all the way in and out that they track fish on when they tag them. And it has been known for a long time that for some reason they kind of disappear. You don't see them go past a certain point, and quite a huge amount of them. And then divers have been down underneath the Hood Canal Bridge and found tags by the thousands. What appears to be happening is they come up shallow and they turn to get to one of the openings, and the seals know it, and they just sit there and have lunch. They could use chopsticks if they want, because they just pull them right on out because they all go there. And that's apparently having a huge impact on steelhead, more especially, but also on salmon. And so that money is an important investment. It's not just throwing money out there. When it's that obvious, and we know that those tags are down there by I don't know the exact number, but we're talking thousands. It is a
third of the salmon are not getting out.
Can you imagine?
When the bridge was under
The steelhead.
No, salmon too.
I
It's
think we're
both.
talking about steelhead right now.
Yes, we're using steelhead to go after the money, but salmon has the same problem.
I don't know if they're tagging Chinook too, aren't they?
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah.
But, you know, here's what I learned just the other day, that in the Columbia River, and this is, I think, probably applicable here, when you count salmon, you count them a couple of ways. So you implant the fish with a tag, and if it goes up like you see at the locks in Seattle, when it goes through a frame, then it beeps and you can count them, right? But some of these new tags that are emit a beep, they are read by a buoy.
Mm-hmm.
But we found that the seals can also hear that. So a seal doesn't have to do much to find the
That's
fish
interesting.
when it hears it coming. So
So after that, I also met with a sewer advisory member and trying to work out some more of the odds and ends. West Sound Alliance steering committee meeting, and then I also had a West Sound Alliance stakeholder meeting. And again, I'm just shocked that they all show up. All those leaders continue to show up each and every time, and it really is getting somewhere. It's nice to watch Democrats and Republicans working together on some of these things and asking each other to support each other, and that's just appreciated. Also, the North Mason Chamber of Commerce gala event. I don't usually attend those, but I did this time and tried to look pretty, but I assure you I failed. We had our regular briefings, and then I had a left board meeting this morning. With that being said, next week. After this meeting, we have a finance committee meeting. A meeting with Ridgeway Motorsports people, executive director, Kitsap Transportation Commission up there, the EDC regulatory meeting, Skoke GI executive committee meeting, EDC board meeting, the sewer committee meeting, the Association of Counties Legislative Conference call, the Republican meeting tonight to talk to them about the sewer, EDC annual luncheon, and then Monday brings about a holiday. Is there anything further to come before this body? Hearing none, I will entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
We are adjourned.
You know, they were also saying this morning.